Hi everyone, welcome to another lesson of tonal harmony. The chord of the day today is 7-7. Let's get started by noticing that chord 7-7 is built on the 7th degree of the scale. The root of this chord is the 7th degree of the scale. And at the same time, it is a 7th chord. So it means that it has not only the root, the 3rd and the 5th, but it has also got the 7th above the root. 5-7 and 7-7 share 3 notes in common. And they are closely related. In fact, the inversions of 5-7 and the inversion of 7-7 with the same scale degree in the bass share the same functions and can mostly be substituted for each other. You can see on the stave how close to each other chords 5-7 and 7-7 in A minor are. And I have a question for you. What degree of the scale is the 7th of 7-7? What degree of the scale is the 7th of chord 7-7? Now let's talk about the functions of chord 7-7 and its inversions, of course. 7-7 has the following 2 functions. First, it can expand the tonic just like the inversions of 5-7 do. And second, they can be a soft dominant in the middle of a piece, a part of a softer cadence. And in such a case, 7-7 can have its own predominant, so it functions as a dominant chord, and as such, it can take its own predominant. And let's take a look at an example here in A minor. This chord progression uses chord 7-7 both in order to expand the tonic and to build a soft cadence. We start on chord 1 in A minor. Then we move on to 7-7. And in A minor, 7-7 is notes G sharp, B, D, and F. So let's see how they are organized in this chord. In the bass, we have the G sharp, the root of the chord. Then we have the B, the 3rd of the chord in the alto. The D, the 5th of the chord, we have in the soprano. And then the 7th, we have in the tenor. G sharp, B, D, F. So we have 7-7 in root position as our second chord. And then we go straight back to the tonic. So our bass moves A, G sharp, and A. Tonic, 7-7, and once again, tonic. So that means that what we have got here is a tonic expansion using 7-7 as that chord that through which we move from one tonic to another. And then what happens? So we've established the tonic, and then we want the harmonic story to go on. And we have in mind that we ultimately want to go to the dominant, but before we get there, what happens is that we have got a 2-7 chord as a predominant, a half diminished 2-7 chord, and it is a predominant chord. So what has to come after that is either a dominant or 7-7 or its inversion, which functions like a softer dominant. So what happens after that predominant chord is that we have got 7 chord in 7-7 in first inversion. So that means that our labeling is 7-6-5. 7-7 chord in the first inversion is 7 6, 5. So that means that instead of the root, we have got the third in the tonic. B, D, F, and G sharp. And take a look how closely related 2, 7 and 7, 6, 5 are. Almost all of the voices, 3 voices, keep the common tones, and just one voice moves down. So the connection between these 2 chords is very smooth. And then after that 7, 6, 5, we have the tonic, but it's the tonic in the first inversion. So we don't have the A in the bass, we have the C in the bass. So this cadence here that we have established, 2, 7, 7, 6, 5, and 1, 6, is a very soft cadence because we are not finishing on the tonic in the root position, it's the tonic in the first inversion, so it's softer. We don't have a 5, 7 chord, we have a 7, 7 chord in an inversion, so it again is softer. So we have this softer cadence here. And of course, we don't want to finish with a soft cadence. So after that softer cadence, we have a stronger cadence. 5, 1, 5 in root position and 1 in root position. So we can see that in this chord progression, 7, 7 chord has been used first to expand the tonic and then to write a softer cadence. Okay, now let's move on to the following question. What are some possible bass shapes for tonic expansions using 7, 7 and its inversions? So let's explore that together. Tonic expansion means that I want to start on the tonic and I want to finish on the tonic, and then I want to have something here, something in between, through which I will move from one tonic to another. Okay, so here on the side, I'm going to just write for myself the notes of my 7, 7 chord in A minor. Notice that I, of course, have to raise the 7th degree of the scale, so that's the root of 7, 7 when I am in a minor. And I'm writing these 4 notes just to make thinking easier for myself. So from A, I could move, of course, down to G sharp. This is the closest option. Is just a half step down from A. So A, G sharp, and A. That would be a perfect tonic expansion, and we would harmonize it as 1, then 7, 7, and 1 again. And this is the exact same expansion that we saw in the previous, on the previous page in the chord progression. Okay, but what are some other ones? So again, I want to start on 1. And then instead of to G sharp, I could go to B, the third of 7, 7 chord. And then from B, I would go up to C. And so this tonic expansion would be 1, then 7, I have labeled it wrong. It's not 7, 7, it is 7, 6, 5. And then 1, 6. So again, it's the same that we have seen. It's similar to what we have seen in the chord progression on the previous page, that after 7 in the first inversion comes 1 in first inversion. Okay, what are some other shapes? So instead of, we've done G sharp, we've done B. So now let's move on to a D. So let's say we are going to start again on A, and then I want to go to D. So I want to have 7 in the second inversion. So I'm going to have chord 1, then 7 in the second inversion. That's going to be 4-3. The labeling is the same for all the 7th chords. And then after that, I will want my bass to move down to C. So 1, 7, 4, 3, and 1, 6. This is another possibility for a bass shape that expands the tonic, moves us from one tonic to another through 7/7 chord. This is the third option. Now, the fourth option, let's see what it is. We have used G sharp, we've used B, we've used D, so now we only have the F left. So we start on the tonic, and then F, so I'm going to move down here, and this is going to be labeled as 7/2. And here's the thing, after 7/2, I cannot have another tonic, so it won't be a tonic expansion. After 7/2, what will have to come is a 5. Why? Because if I have the F in A minor in the bass, that F is the 6th degree of the scale. And the 6th degree of the scale naturally wants to move down a step, move down to A. So if I have the first and then the 6th degree of the scale, and if I jumped back up to the 1st degree of the scale, it would sound awkward because this is not how the notes naturally want to behave. So the F naturally wants to move down to E. It's the very same thing that happens in a Phrygian cadence. When you have a 4/6, you have the same note in the bass. In A minor, in 4/6, you have got the F in the bass. And that same note naturally wants to move down to E. So after 4/6, we want to have chord 5. And the same, after 7/2, we want to have chord 5. It's all depending on the bass shapes, and this is why the bass shapes are so important. So that means that we have done a tonic expansion here, we've done a tonic expansion here, another one here, and this is not a tonic expansion, but it is a very useful bass shape. And these are the possibilities for us in terms of bass shapes using this new chord that we're learning today, 7/7 and its inversions. Okay, now let's move on to some rules that apply to 7/7. First, let's talk about doubling. Every position must be complete. This means we have to have the root, we have to have the 3rd, we have to have the 5th, and we have to have the 7th. We cannot omit any of those. And we cannot omit even the 5th, which is something that we do accept in root position 7th chords like 5/7 or 2/7. We sometimes can omit the 5th and double the root. Well, in 7/7 we cannot do that. We have to include every single note of the chord. So do not omit the 5th even in a root position. Now let's talk about preparing. So this is our second rule. Prepare the 7th, the dissonant 7th, when possible. And here I have a question for you. Coming from what chords will it be possible to prepare the 7th of 7, 7? Coming from what chords will it be possible to prepare the 7th of 7, 7? And third, I would like us to think about how to resolve chord 7, 7. This chord is a diminished chord, which means that it is made of minor thirds stacked one upon another. The 5th of that chord is diminished. The interval from the root to the 5th, that is a diminished 5th. And the 7th of that chord is also diminished. So this means that 7, 7 is a highly dissonant chord. And that is why we have to take great care in resolving it. But the good news are that you have dealt with these rules already when we were talking about 7, 6 chord. And 7, 7 is very similar. It's even more dissonant than 7, 6. Okay, so here are some rules for resolving. All the notes of the chord must resolve by step only. So no leaps. Every single note that belongs to the chord has to move on to the next chord by step. And usually in a 7th chord, I ask you to think about the leading tone, which must lead onto the 1st degree of the scale, or onto the 5th degree of the scale if it is in an inner voice. And I also ask you to think about the 7th of the chord, which has to resolve by step. The case of 7, 7 chord is slightly different because it is not a usual 7th chord. It is fully diminished. So in this case, we are going to focus on the tritones. So the second rule for resolving is be aware of the tritones. And if you spot a diminished 5th, which is a tritone, it must collapse inward by contrary motion into a 3rd. If you spot an augmented 4th, which is another kind of a tritone, it can resolve in any way you want as long as the voices move by step. So with the diminished 5th, we only have got one option. With augmented 4th, we do have other options, but the voices must move by step. This is very important. So let's take a look here at what I've written for you, just in a single staff. We have got here, we are in A minor, and we have got here the 7, 7 chord, G sharp, B, D, and F. And the first tritone that we have is between the root and the 5th. This is one tritone. And another one is between the 3rd and the 7th. This is another one. So we will always spot two tritones, diminished 5ths or augmented 4ths. And we have to be aware of them so that we know how to resolve them. So the one that is between the root and the 5th is G sharp and D, and it is a diminished 5th. Because if we go step by step, G, A, B, D, C, D, this is 5 notes. So G to D would be a perfect 5th. If I raise the bottom note, this is a diminished 5th. So G sharp to D is a diminished 5th. And as such, it has to collapse inward. So the voices have to move in contrary motion in order to create a 3rd. So the 3rd is the only possible resolution of the diminished 5th. But if I swap these two notes, and if I have the G sharp on the top and the D on the bottom, this is what I get, an augmented 4th. And as such, it has got two options. It can either move in contrary motion again by step, and the resolution is going to be the 6th, or one of the voices can move in the same direction as the other voice, so in parallel motion. And this is when the augmented 4th is going to resolve into a perfect fourth. But generally, remember that you always have to move by step, and this is going to make things, for sure, much easier. Okay, we have got 3 examples here. Let's do them together. We have got 3 examples here, and the task is to resolve the tritones of the 7/7 chord correctly, so we end up on a nice tonic. Okay, first I told you to be aware of the tritones, so let's spot the tritones. Let's move from the bass. G sharp to D, is that a tritone? Well, it looks like it is a diminished fifth. Then where do I have another tritone? Let's see, F to B. Is this a tritone? Well, absolutely. From F to B flat, that would be a perfect fourth. So F to B natural, that must be an augmented fourth. Okay, so if I know that, I practically know everything. Because if I have a diminished fifth, I know that I have to collapse it into a third. And if I have an augmented fourth, I know that I can either move the voices in the contrary motion or in similar motion. So notice that in the soprano, oh no, sorry, I thought it was the leading tone, but of course it's not. The leading tone is here in the bass, so never mind. Well, let's move the voices in contrary motion and see what happens. So B is going to go up to C and F is going to go down to E. And is that okay? Well, it looks like I've got an A, C, E, and C again. So I have doubled the third, which is, of course, fine. We could also do this. Would it be correct? I would in this way double the root. But the thing is that in this case, if my F from here goes up to A, it's no longer moving by step, so it's not good voice leading. So the option with E was much better. Okay, let's move on to the second example. And again, first let's start by spotting the tritones in the 7/7 chord. So let's work from the bass. G sharp to D. Yes, I know that already. It is a tritone and it is a diminished fifth. Now B to F, it must be. In the previous example, I had F to B. So the same 2 notes, B to F, must also be the tritone, but it will no longer be an augmented fourth. This time it is going to be a diminished fifth, 2. So that's even easier than the previous one. If I've got 2 diminished fifths, I have to just collapse them inward. So G sharp is going to go up to A, D is going to go down to C. And there we go. There's the resolution. And here B is going to go up to C and F is going to go down to E. And that's perfect. I've got a tonic chord, A, C, C and E. I've got all the notes of the chord and I've doubled the third, which is fine. And I have got the octave between the inner voices, so it's just the right distance between the inner voices. And let's do the third example here. So here's my 7/7 chord, and again let's move from the bass in order to find the tritones. G sharp to B, G sharp to B, is that a tritone? No, G sharp and B is, that's a third. Okay, so this is not the tritone. Now, G sharp to F, is that a tritone? No, it's the 7th, it's the diminished 7th. So that's not the case. So that must mean that G sharp to D is my tritone. And this is a diminished fifth. And now let's see if the remaining two voices are tritone apart. B to F. Yes. And this is also a diminished fifth. So B to F sharp would be a perfect fifth. So if I have a B to F, not F sharp, that means that I have a diminished fifth instead of the perfect fifth. So that's great because I once again have only one option. So the first diminished fifth, G sharp to D, has to collapse into a third. This is what happens. And B to F also has to collapse into a third. And this is the perfect resolution of that 7/7 chord into chord 1. Okay, that was quite a material, that was quite a lot of material on 7/7 chord. And I would like us now to take a look at concrete examples of the inversions of 7/7. And let's start with the root position of the chord, and let's talk about what happens with this chord in a major key. So in C major we are, and the 7/7 chord is going to start on the 7th degree, of course, so that is going to be B, then D, F, and A, right? These are the notes that belong to the C major chord. But you see, if we have got an A, the 7/7 chord is no longer fully diminished. It is a half diminished chord. This is why I put the crossed circle here. B, D, F, A is a half diminished chord. Because we have got a minor seventh here from the root to the 7th and not a diminished one. So if I want to have a fully diminished chord in C major, then what I have to do is I have to lower the 7th of that chord, which at the same time is the 6th degree of the scale. So in order to have a 7/7 fully diminished chord in a major key, I will have to lower the 6th degree of the scale. And this is an operation that we have to remember about. What is the reason for that operation? The reason is that 7/7 as a half diminished chord in a major key sounds a little bit wonky, and you will not see it often in the literature. It has not been widely used, so composers have often simply preferred to have a fully diminished chord, 7/7, even in a major key. And this is really exciting because this means that for the very first time in this class, we are adding accidentals to our chord progressions. So we are changing the notes that are normally within a scale, and that means that we are entering into the realm of chromaticism, just very slight chromaticism here. So let's take a look at this chord progression. What is going on here? We start on chord 1. And sorry, this was saying chord 6, but of course it's not correct. So we have got chord 1 in C major. And then we have got 7/7 that moves on to again chord 1. So we have a tonic expansion through 7/7. And we want it to be a diminished chord. And this is why we do not have an A, we have an A flat. But what happens later on is that after the tonic expansion, we want to move on to a predominant chord, 2/6. And 2/6 in C major, of course, includes A. So we have to remember that even though we lowered this note in 7/7, here we have to stick to what is normal for the scale. We have to stick to what the notes actually are for this chord. So this is why we have to use this sign here. And then we go on to the authentic cadence. Okay, let's take a look at this bass line and let's try to harmonize it together. So we are in C major and we're starting on chord 1. I'm going to put the root in the soprano, the fifth in the alto, and the third in the tenor. And then I have to move on to chord 1 in the first inversion. So if my bass is going from the root to the third, then my tenor can move from the third down to the root. And my soprano and my alto are going to stay the same. Now I need to have chord 2, which consists of D, F, and A. I am going to move my soprano in the in contrary motion with the bass. So I have already 2 roots here, 2 Ds. So I still need an F, and I need a A. So let me go for A in the alto, and let me move up in the tenor for the third. It doesn't seem like I have any illegal parallels, so that's great. And then I have got my 7/7 chord, which consists of B, D, F, and A flat. B I have got in the bass. Now D, I could keep it as a common tone in the soprano. B, D, F, that is going to be another common tone with a tenor. And I need an A flat. I'm going to put it in the alto. And now what happens here is, as you can see, 7/7 here functions as a softer dominant that leads onto the tonic, and it has its own predominant in front of it. So the predominant prepares us for 7/7. And I have asked you when we were talking about the rules about 7/7, I have asked you to always prepare the 7th of 7/7 whenever possible. The 7th of 7/7 in C major is A flat. In order to prepare that note, what I have to do is I have to turn the previous note A into an A flat 2 in order to have this A flat prepared. So I don't want to move chromatically from A to A flat. I want to have prepared that A flat in advance. So this means that if chord 2 comes after 7/7, in which we've lowered the 6th degree of the scale, we are going to stick to the normal notes of the scale, normal notes of the chord. But if chord 2 or any other predominant comes right in front of 7/7, what we are going to have to do is we're going to have to adjust that 6th degree of the scale. Let's keep on doing our harmonization. We are moving from 7/7 onto chord 1, and I definitely see the potential for a contrary motion with the bass in the soprano. So my D is going to go down to C, then A can go down to G, and of course F down to E. Okay, this is perfect, and then 5/7. We want to have a 5/7, then I need to add the 7th and resolve it onto the tonic. Okay. Let's move on to 765. We have seen examples of that previously, but I want to draw your attention to the fact that after 765, we will always need our bass to move up. So after 765, we will always need 1/6. It results from the resolution of the tritone, because B to D here is a tritone, and it is, sorry, not B to D, B to F is a tritone, and it is a diminished fifth, so the bottom voice has to go up. And then another tritone we have got here, G sharp to D, so the top voice will have to go down so that both tritones collapse into thirds. And that means that that bass will always have to move up. So it results from the voice leading rule and from the way that we want to treat the tritone. So after 765, we will always have 1/6. And now 743, that is the second inversion of 7/7. And after that 7/4/3, just like in this example, we will usually also have 1/6. So this is a bass shape that we have created together from the root, then to the 4th degree of the scale, and then down to the 3rd degree of the scale. And again, there is nothing special here in this inversion. Just remember about how to resolve the tritones, and we're going to be fine. And then the last inversion of 7/7 is 7/2 or 7/2/4. In flat, you will see 7/2/4. I prefer to simplify it into 7/2. And 7/2, as we have already seen when we were building the bass shapes, will always want to go onto chord 5 or 5/7, because the 6th degree of the scale in the bass will always want to move down to E. And that means that 7/2 will nicely lead onto the dominant, and the connection is going to be really smooth, because notice that 7/2 and 5/7 have only as many as 3 notes in common, right? So we will only need to very slightly move the bass, and the rest of the chord can stay on its place. So we won't need to move much, just the bass. And this will be enough in order to move from 7/2 to 5/7. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that this lesson has been useful and helpful in explaining to you what the function and the character of this highly dissonant 7/7 chord is. Probably the most important part of this lesson was how to resolve the chord and how to treat the tritones when you use chord 7/7. Thanks a lot, and don't forget to move on to the next parts of the lesson.